Hey there, friends. Welcome to another snackable solo version of the Marketing Your Practice podcast. How has your week been? Mine's been busy. I've got lots to talk with you about today in this short episode. I'm going to do a quick book review. I've this year have read one of the best marketing books. In fact, this is one of the best books that I've read this year, and it's one of the best marketing and branding books that I've read, full stop. The book I'm talking about is called Building a Story Brand, and it's written by Don Miller. It's definitely worth a read. I started listening to this book a little while ago. I love to listen to audiobooks. Do you listen to audiobooks? I know it works for some of them. My gorgeous wife, Lauren, can't stand it. She can't listen to stuff, can't concentrate while we're doing it. If we're trying in the car to listen to a book, it drives her nuts. It kind of just doesn't, her brain doesn't work that way. But I love them, unless it's a book that I really want to kind of dissect, in which case I really like having the kind of book there too, because I kind of scribble through my books. So for those of you that are watching the video, I'm kind of showing the book here as well. I take notes all through them. It kind of really helps my learning style. That's another thing that Lauren doesn't like. She keeps her books all kind of pristine, and mine look like they've been through kind of World War II after I've been with them. But I want to tell you, there was one key thing out of this book, which Don talks about almost at the very beginning of it, which I could have closed the book after that because I got my money's worth. And he talks about when you confuse, you lose. Now, again, and I often kind of think about too, I was explaining this to someone the other day, except I said when you confuse, they snooze, meaning that your audience ends up snoozing as well. Same kind of thing. When we use language that confuses our audience, they're never going to follow on through. In fact, I've been studying lots about this concept of neuromarketing recently and how we learn things, how we're able to influence and persuade people. And we really can't have our audience having to think too hard. If they have to think too hard about the concepts that we're sharing, then their brain goes into overwhelm, it shuts down, and they're going to just go on to whatever's next. Now, whether that might be scrolling through their Instagram or their Facebook feed, if they're on your website, it's going to be bouncing onto another site. So if we overwhelm our audience, then we're going to lose there too. Now, I think this is particularly important for us as health practitioners. I had a coaching call this morning with a great young chiropractor, and we got talking about the level of health IQ that we have. You guys are all natural health practitioners. So many of us have had, multiple years of anatomy, physiology, patient management, diagnosis. So we have what I often refer to as a really high health IQ. We have an understanding about how the body works and languaging and around that too. That's often really quite sophisticated. And we've been used to communicating with our lecturers in our reports that we're writing, our case studies that we're doing, using a very certain kind of language. And then we get out there and we start communicating with patients and in the real world. And we forget that they haven't had those same multi-year degrees that we do. And we overwhelm them. And often we use jargon. So these are words that, that are industry specific. Chiropractors, we like to talk about subluxation. And again, for you chiropractors that might be cringing out there, I'm a subluxation-based chiropractor. If you're a dentist or another health professional here, then this will be a conversation for another time there too. But when we get into really sophisticated language, it often overwhelms our audience. There's a great example inside the book here, which I want to share with you. Back in 1983, Steve Jobs and the Apple crew released a computer called Lisa. Now, my guess is you've probably never heard of it. And the reason you've probably never heard of it is because it was a massive failure. Now, they launched it with an advertisement in the New York Times. And get this, it was 9 pages long. So 9 pages going into the technical kind of specifics of this computer, what it could do, what it couldn't do, why it was better than the competition. And it overwhelmed everybody. And because it overwhelmed everybody, it was a complete flop. And it was ultimately what led to Steve Jobs being fired from his own company. Now, he left there and he went and spent some time at Pixar. And it was his time at Pixar that he started to understand the importance of simplicity and what he referred to as a more customer-centric model. And when he eventually came back into Apple, the first product he launched back into Apple again was launched in the New York Times, but this time round it was launched with 2 words. Can you remember what those 2 words were? It was think differently. Now, that was what many people talk about as the foundation, the stepping stone that led to Apple being the huge success that it is now. And certainly it was foundational in the success of Steve Jobs. when you go from 9 pages to 1 page and particularly 2 words, then that is the very definition of simplicity. And I think that we need to be really aware of this as health practitioners as well. So I want to wind this up and I want you to think about a couple of things. I want you to think about the way that you're communicating with your patients and your prospective patients. What sort of language are you using? If you're making a video in around posture, this morning when I was talking with this great doc, she was talking about things like upper cross and distal cross. And I went, wait, stop. That's the language that we understand. Your community knows about rounded, slumped shoulders. That's the kind of language they understand. So how are you communicating with them? Are you confusing them? And if you are confusing them, then that may be the reason why they're not watching your videos. It may be the reason why they're not engaging with your content as well. So do an overview. And sometimes what you need with this is that you need a little bit of a hand. So sometimes you need somebody from outside. Maybe it's your support staff to have a look at all your content to tell you when you're using this jargon. And it's important that you simplify your website, that you simplify your videos, that you simplify all of your communication. Now, if you want a hand with some of this, I mentioned last week on the podcast, I'm launching this final 4 weeks of the year, a program called Project Sprint 2019. And it's all about, instead of winding down for these last 4 weeks, it's one last final sprint. Now, the reason why I think one last final sprint is a really great idea, we all shut down between Christmas and New Year. And it means that when you come back in 2020, you hit the ground running. So imagine what it might feel like to know what your website needs to look like. Now, maybe this is you're going to build it out yourself, or maybe you're going to just send this to your designer where you understand what message needs to be on there above the fold, on how to take somebody on that journey, how to not overwhelm, how to keep it simple yet powerful at the same time. We'll spend a significant time talking about the patient journey, how to take someone from complete stranger all the way through to ideal patient. I'm going to talk lots about video. That will really help that second step there, because video is such an important tool on building knowing, liking, and trusting. And then finally, I'm going to show you my $1 a day Facebook advertising and Instagram advertising strategy as well. Social media, the platforms, the reach on them continues to decline each and every year. And at the moment, I think it's somewhere between 2 and 6%. So it's really hard to reach people, but for $1 a day, you can get your great videos, your great content, your blog posts, whatever you're creating there in front of sometimes thousands, but often hundreds of people really easily, $1 a day if you know how to do that. And I'm going to show you how to do all of that. So if you want to come and join me, adiomedia.com/sprint. This is only a really small group. I'm only opening up 10 spots and some of them have gone already. So by the time that you're listening to this, it'll be a couple of days after I've actually recorded it. But if there's spots there, then come and join me. It's a small group because there's a lot of one-on-one hand holding. So I'm setting up a video messaging kind of app where you'll be able to contact me every day. You'll have my private email address so I can help you with your content, with your website, with all of this kind of stuff. We'll be having, once a week I'll be releasing content, and then the middle of the week we'll be having kind of group Q&A. So it's very hands-on. If this sounds like you, if you want to jump into 2020 hitting the ground running, then adiomedia.com/sprint. If you're looking for a book to read between now and Christmas, or between the Christmas and New Year, then Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller is a winner. Gang, as always, thanks for all that you do. Keep saving lives. See you back here next week. Bye. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast, you have to come and check out the Community Influencer Program. It's my monthly coaching program where we take all this material and I'll work one-on-one with you to apply, implement, systematize, and help guide you and your practice to the next level. Now you can join me over at adiomedia.com/join. That's adiomedia.com/join. I'd love to see you in there.